Keanu Reeves takes a rare day off to wander through the quiet streets of Los Angeles, enjoying the simplicity of life away from the cameras. While passing a small park, he notices a group of homeless individuals gathered around a makeshift shelter. A familiar face catches his attention, a man with weathered features and a tattered coat. Keanu hesitates, then realizes it's Mr. Gallagher, his high school English teacher, the man who sparked his love for storytelling and acting. Shocked, Keanu decides to approach him. As Keanu calls out, Mr. Gallagher turns, his eyes widening in recognition. "Keanu, is that you?" he asks, disbelief evident in his voice. The two embrace, but the moment is bittersweet. Mr. Gallagher's once vibrant personality seems dulled by hardship. Keanu sits with him on a nearby bench, eager to understand how his once inspiring teacher ended up here. Over steaming cups of coffee from a nearby vendor, Mr. Gallagher begins to share his story. After retiring from teaching, he pursued his passion for writing, pouring his heart into a novel. The manuscript, however, never found a publisher. Struggling with rejection, he invested his savings in a self-publishing venture that failed miserably. As his debts mounted, his wife left, and he lost his home. Keanu listens intently, heartbroken to see the man who once inspired him so deeply reduced to this state. "You gave me my start," Keanu says. "If it weren't for your classes, I don't know if I'd have the life I do now." Mr. Gallagher shrugs, brushing off the compliment, but Keanu's mind is already racing with ideas. He knows he can't walk away without helping. Keanu returns home that night, Mr. Gallagher's story heavy on his heart. He replays the teacher's passionate lectures about literature and storytelling, remembering how they had ignited his love for acting. Determined to help, Keanu researches resources for homeless individuals, but something deeper gnaws at him. He knows that Mr. Gallagher's unfinished manuscript deserves a second chance. The next day, Keanu contacts his assistant, asking her to clear his schedule for the week. He gathers his team, including a trusted literary agent, and shares Mr. Gallagher's story. "This man shaped who I am," Keanu tells them. "Now it's my turn to give back." The team agrees to help, their faith in Keanu's vision unshakable. Keanu meets Mr. Gallagher again, this time at a small diner. He hands his teacher a manila folder filled with information about housing programs and shelters. Mr. Gallagher hesitates, pride holding him back, but Keanu insists. "This isn't charity, it's repayment," he says with a grin. Reluctantly, Mr. Gallagher agrees to accept help with finding temporary housing. Over lunch, Keanu brings up the manuscript. Mr. Gallagher's face lights up for the first time in years. He admits he kept a copy of the novel despite his circumstances. "I don't know if it's any good," he says, his voice tinged with doubt. Keanu assures him, "If it's anything like your lectures, the world needs to read it." Keanu and Mr. Gallagher visit the storage facility where the teacher kept his few remaining possessions. Amid dusty boxes and faded photographs, they find the manuscript, carefully bound but yellowed with age. Mr. Gallagher holds it with trembling hands, a mix of pride and sorrow washing over him. "This is all I have left," he murmurs. Keanu reassures him, "This is more than enough." They leave the facility, the manuscript tucked safely in Keanu's bag. Mr. Gallagher's hope begins to flicker anew, though doubt still lingers. He wonders if his work will resonate after so many years. That night, Keanu sits in his living room, poring over the manuscript. The story, a heartfelt tale of resilience and redemption, moves him deeply. He sees reflections of Mr. Gallagher's struggles within the characters, their journeys echoing the teacher's own fall and perseverance. Inspired, Keanu calls his literary agent, urging her to read it immediately. "This isn't just a story, it's a masterpiece," he tells her. The agent agrees to meet Mr. Gallagher, setting the wheels in motion for what could be the teacher's long-overdue success. The literary agent meets Mr. Gallagher in Keanu's home, where the teacher nervously explains his story and inspiration. The agent, initially skeptical, is quickly won over by the manuscript's raw emotion and authenticity. She agrees to pitch it to publishers, impressed not just by the story but by Keanu's unwavering belief in it. Keanu watches the exchange with quiet satisfaction. For the first time in years, Mr. Gallagher feels seen and valued. As they celebrate the small victory, Keanu reminds him, "This is only the beginning." Despite the manuscript's promise, the first round of publisher feedback is disheartening. Rejections pour in, each one a blow to Mr. Gallagher's fragile confidence. Maybe it's just not meant to be, he says, slumping in defeat. But Keanu refuses to let him give up. The best stories face the most rejection, he reminds Mr. Gallagher, sharing tales of his own struggles in Hollywood. Together, they resolve to keep trying, determined to find the right home for the novel. Just as hope begins to waver, Keanu's agent receives a glimmer of good news. A small independent publisher expresses interest in the manuscript. The editor is captivated by the raw, emotional storytelling and sees potential in its universal themes of resilience and redemption. They request a meeting with Mr. Gallagher to discuss revisions and publishing options. Keanu excitedly shares the news with Mr. Gallagher, whose face brightens for the first time in weeks. "They want to meet me," he asks, still hesitant to believe it. Keanu nods, encouraging him to embrace the opportunity. "This is your moment," he says. Mr. Gallagher, bolstered by Keanu's unwavering support, agrees to meet the publisher, though his nerves are palpable. The meeting with the publisher takes place in a modest office in downtown Los Angeles. Mr. Gallagher arrives in a borrowed suit, looking every bit the author he once dreamed of becoming. The editor, a young woman with a passion for underdog stories, listens intently as he explains his vision for the book. She suggests a few changes to tighten the narrative and enhance its impact, but her enthusiasm is clear. "This story has the power to change lives," she says. Mr. Gallagher is overwhelmed, nearly brought to tears by the validation he had longed for. Keanu watches proudly from the corner of the room, knowing this is only the start of a new chapter in his teacher's life. With the publisher's guidance, Mr. Gallagher dives into revisions, working late into the night with a renewed sense of purpose. Keanu often joins him, offering feedback and moral support. The process is grueling, but it reignites the fire within Mr. Gallagher, reminding him of the passion that first drove him to write. Keanu admires his teacher's dedication, often reflecting on how Mr. Gallagher had once stayed late after school to help students with their essays or drama rehearsals. Now, Keanu is the one offering encouragement, ensuring Mr. Gallagher stays focused on the goal, bringing his story to the world. Once the manuscript is finalized, the publisher arranges a press release to announce the upcoming novel. Keanu, leveraging his celebrity status, uses his social media platforms to share the story of Mr. Gallagher's journey. The post goes viral, with fans expressing admiration for both Keanu's generosity and Mr. Gallagher's inspiring resilience. The buzz generates excitement around the book, leading to interviews with Mr. Gallagher and pre-orders flooding in. For the first time in years, Mr. Gallagher feels a sense of worth and belonging. "This isn't just my story anymore," he tells Keanu. "It belongs to everyone who's ever struggled and found their way back." When the book, titled The Long Road Back, is released, it becomes an instant hit. Critics praise its authenticity and emotional depth, while readers connect deeply with its message of hope. Within weeks, it climbs bestseller lists, and Mr. Gallagher's name becomes synonymous with resilience and second chances. Keanu throws a small celebration for Mr. Gallagher, inviting friends and former students to honor the teacher's incredible journey. The room is filled with laughter and tears as people share stories of how Mr. Gallagher had impacted their lives. For the first time in years, Mr. Gallagher feels truly seen and appreciated. As the success of The Long Road Back grows, Mr. Gallagher begins receiving invitations to speak at schools, community centers, and conferences. He shares his story of loss and redemption, inspiring countless others to believe in second chances. Keanu attends several of these events, beaming with pride as he watches his teacher thrive. One evening, after a particularly moving speech, Mr. Gallagher turns to Keanu. "You didn't just save my life, you gave it meaning again," he says. Keanu brushes off the compliment, reminding him, "You're the one who wrote the story. I just helped get it out there." With his newfound confidence, Mr. Gallagher decides to return to teaching, not in a traditional classroom, but through writing workshops for underprivileged youth. Keanu funds the program, ensuring that students have access to resources and mentorship. Together, they launch a scholarship fund in Mr. Gallagher's name, aimed at supporting aspiring writers. The workshops become a huge success, with Mr. Gallagher's story serving as a source of inspiration for the students. Many of them go on to achieve their own dreams, crediting Mr. Gallagher for teaching them to believe in themselves. Despite his success, Mr. Gallagher knows there's one part of his past he hasn't faced: his estranged wife. Encouraged by Keanu, he reaches out to her, hoping for closure. Their meeting is emotional, filled with tears and apologies. While they decide not to rekindle their relationship, they part on good terms, both grateful for the opportunity to heal. This chapter of Mr. Gallagher's life teaches him the importance of forgiveness, both of others and of himself. He incorporates this lesson into his speeches, encouraging others to confront their own unresolved pain. The success of The Long Road Back catches the attention of a major film studio, which approaches Mr. Gallagher about adapting the book into a movie. Keanu, thrilled by the idea, volunteers to produce the film and even takes on a small role. Together, they work to ensure the movie stays true to the book's message. The film becomes a critical and commercial success, introducing Mr. Gallagher's story to an even wider audience. On opening night, Mr. Gallagher walks the red carpet with Keanu by his side, overwhelmed by the surreal turn his life has taken. With his newfound platform, Mr. Gallagher becomes an advocate for homelessness awareness and literacy programs. He partners with nonprofits to support housing initiatives and uses proceeds from his book and film to fund community projects. Keanu remains by his side, quietly supporting every endeavor. Their efforts lead to tangible change, with countless lives improved by their work. Mr. Gallagher's story becomes a symbol of what can happen when people are given a second chance and the support they need to succeed. One evening, Mr. Gallagher visits the school where he once taught, now renamed in his honor. Walking through the halls, he sees photos of students he once mentored, many of whom have gone on to achieve great things. It's a humbling moment, one that reminds him of the legacy he left behind long before his book was ever published. Keanu joins him, reflecting on how far they've both come. "You always said stories have the power to change lives," Keanu says. "You proved it." Mr. Gallagher smiles, grateful for the journey that brought him here. As Mr. Gallagher settles into his new life, he begins working on a second book, a memoir about his journey from teacher to author and advocate. Keanu, now a lifelong friend, continues to support him, though he insists he's merely repaying the debt he owes to his favorite teacher. The story ends with Mr. Gallagher standing before a group of young writers holding a copy of his book. "Every story matters," he tells them, his voice steady and strong. "Even when you feel lost, remember, you have the power to rewrite your own ending." The room erupts in applause, and Mr. Gallagher's heart swells with gratitude, knowing his story has come full circle.